In our video today, I will discuss all the types of stresses that we will cover in the mechanics of deformable bodies. But I will just separate the three major types of stresses, and then for now, we'll focus on the first type of stress. Now, the first type of stress is the axial stress, or it may also be called the normal stress, which will occur to members that are axially loaded. These axial forces can be in tension or compression, and the force is applied at the cross-section of the member. Now, the equilibrium analysis of a rigid body is concerned primarily with the calculation of external reactions, which are forces that act external to a body, and internal reactions or forces that act at internal connections. However, in mechanics of materials, we must extend this analysis to determine internal forces. These are forces that act on cross-sections that are internal to the body themselves. In addition, you must investigate the manner in which these internal forces are distributed within the body. Only after these computations have been made can the design engineer select the proper dimensions for a member and select the material from which the member should be fabricated. Now, this is important in construction. Up to this point, we have been concerned only with the resultant of the internal force system. However, in design, the manner in which the internal forces are distributed is equally important. This consideration leads us to introduce the force intensity at a point, which is called stress. This plays a central role in the design of load-bearing members. Now, in our previous subject, statics, we are able to perform the first step in the analysis of a given structure. But the values we obtain do not necessarily tell us whether the given load can be safely supported, considering the material or the type of connection. The strength of a certain member depends upon the value found of the internal force, the cross-sectional area of the body, and the type of material of which the body is made. As such, the internal force represents the resultant of elementary forces distributed over the entire area, and the average intensity of these distributed forces is equal to the force per unit area. Whether or not the members will break under a given loading clearly depends upon the ability of a material to withstand the corresponding value of the intensity of the distributed internal forces. And so again, relating this to our formula, it depends upon the force, the cross-sectional area, and the material of the body, which will give us an idea of the allowable stress. Now, the force per unit area, or intensity of the forces distributed over a given section, is called the stress on that section, and it is denoted by the Greek letter S, which we call sigma. And so, the stress in the member of cross-sectional area A, subjected to an axial load P, is therefore obtained by dividing the magnitude of the force P by the cross-sectional area A. Now, this is something you always have to remember. Axial stress is a type of stress that occurs when the force is applied along the axis or length of a structural member, such as a beam rod or column. It represents the internal force per unit area acting on a section of the material perpendicular to the applied force. This axial stress can be either tensile or compressive, depending on the direction of the applied force relative to the material. So try to recall that we have discussed what forces are tensile or compressive in nature in the analysis of trusses. Tensile for pulling forces causing elongation, for which our sign convention is positive. And then we have compressive stresses, which develop due to pushing forces that could cause the shortening of a member. Now, our sign convention for that is negative. Now, this is because it tends to decrease the length of the material along the axis of the applied force. Now, let me reiterate, the area of interest for both of these stresses is the perpendicular area. Let's try to consider the two objects shown at the right subjected to a force P. And then let's recall the definition of the word perpendicular. Perpendicular is a geometric term used to describe the relationship between two lines, planes, or surfaces that meet or intersect at the right angle, which is 90 degrees. Now, if you look at our force P, notice that it is perpendicular with this line, because we can form a 90-degree angle at their intersection. And so, what this means is our perpendicular area will be these areas. However, at first glance, we may not be able to make sense of the area that we will consider, as it is sometimes difficult to interpret the area when we are viewing the bodies on a two-dimensional plane, or 2D. But notice that the area we are considering here is the cross-sectional area. Now, the cross-sectional area refers to the area of a two-dimensional shape that result from cutting or slicing through a solid object perpendicular to its longest dimension or axis. In simpler terms, it is the area of the shape that is revealed when you make a straight cut through an object such as a cylinder, cube, or beam at the right angle to its length. Now, if we will rotate these objects, we will be able to see that area. Rotating these two, we would have this figure. For a cylindrical object, like a pipe or wire, the cross-sectional area would be a circle. And then for rectangular objects, such as this one, the cross-sectional area would be the rectangular area that you can observe that's perpendicular to the force P. Now in some cases, our cables or rods may be inclined, but we will still consider a force perpendicular to that area, which is essentially the compressive or tensile force in the member. Now these forces right here, they are the resultant forces in our members, or simply the internal forces developed in our members. However, if we are to get the stress or pressure, these two terms may be interchanged. We will now be distributing the resultant force P over the whole area. And so, instead of this singular force, we will now distribute the force this way. And so notice that the force has been distributed throughout the cross-section. In general, the value obtained for the stress sigma at a given point is different from the value of the average stress given by the formula P over A. Now, in reality, sigma is found to vary across the section. The actual distribution of stresses in any given section is said to be statically indeterminate. However, in practice, it will be assumed that the distribution of normal stresses in an axially loaded member is uniform to simplify the calculations, except in the immediate vicinity of the points of application of the loads. So essentially, the values of the stresses are made equal to save time, and then we can obtain it from the simple formula of force divided by the area. However, we must realize that when we assume a uniform distribution of stresses in the section, such as when we assume that the internal forces are uniformly distributed across the section, it follows from elementary statics that the resultant P of the internal forces must be applied at the centroid C of the section, which is for the rod at this portion, center of the circle, while for the cube, it's at the center, since the figure is just symmetrical. This means that a uniform distribution of stress is possible only if the line of action of the concentrated load passes through the center of the section considered. Now, since SI metric units are used in this discussion, with P expressed in newtons and A in square meters, the stress sigma will be expressed in Newton per m squared. And then this unit is called a Pascal. Now, let's write that here. 1 Pascal is equivalent to Newton per m squared. And so, if we have kPa, that will just be Kn per m squared. And then if we have MPa, that will be meganewton per m squared. And then if we have GPa, that will be giganewton per m squared. So this is just like kilobytes, megabytes, and gigabytes when we are talking about computer memory. As such, 1 kPa is equal to 1000 pascals, just like 1000 bytes is equal to 1 kilobyte, and then 1 MPa is equal to 1000 kilopascals, since there are 1000 thousandths in a million, and then 1 GPa is equal to 1000 MPa. This will be our conversion. Now, in our usual calculations, we will be using the MPa unit. This is because our cross-sections are usually small and have dimensions in millimeters. Now, you might wonder, MPa is meganewtons per meter squared. Why is it generally applied? The reason is meganewton per m squared actually just means Newton per millimeter squared. Now, let's try to prove that. So, yung first focus natin is explaining kung bakit equal lang yung MPa saka yung Newton per millimeter squared. So, diba, ito yung MPa. Ayan. Meganewton per m squared. So, 1 MPa is equal to 1 meganewton per m squared. Ayan. Now, what if I want to convert this into Newton per millimeter squared? Now, diba, we can convert meganewtons. We have, for 1 meganewton, essentially, 1 meganewton, ayan, is equal to 1000 kilonewtons. And then 1000 kN naman, 1 kilonewton naman is equal to 1000 newtons. Ayan. So, converting Mn to newtons, we would have, first, convert muna natin into Kn yan. So, parang ito yung conversion factor. We have 1 Mn, para mag-cancel yung dalawa, ito saka ito. We have 1000 kilonewtons. And then, converting kilonewtons to newtons naman, we can multiply by this factor. 1000 newtons, yan dapat yung nasa itaas para mag-cancel yung kilonewtons. So, this is divided by 1 kN. So, magka-cancel yung kN. Ayan. And then, yung m squared naman, we can also convert that. Conversion factor natin is, ito na lang. Ayan. For m squared, alam natin na 1 meter is equal to 1000 mm. Ayan. But diba, yung meter dyan, naka-square, so kailangan din natin i-square sa conversion. So, 1000 times 1000, diba, 1000 squared yan, and then yung nasa ilalim nito, 1000 squared din. So, essentially, magka-cancel lang yan lahat. Cancel, saka ito rin. And then, what would be left is Newton divided by mm squared. Therefore pala, meganewton per m squared, ayan, is just equal to Newton per millimeter squared. So kaya usually yung makikita mo sa stress values, naka-MPa yan siya. It just means Newton per mm squared. Which is usually naman, ito yung ginagamit since our sections are essentially naka-millimeter lang yung dimensions. Masyadong malaki na kapag naka-meter. Unless we are talking about beams or columns. Or slabs din. Sige, so ito yung first question natin. A hollow steel tube with an inside diameter of 100 mm must carry a tensile load of 400 kilonewtons. So meron tayong dalawang questions. Meron kasi akong mga dinagdag sa previous lecture. So our first question is, determine the outside diameter of the tube if the maximum working stress or yield stress of the material is 120 meganewton per m squared. So again, sa conversion natin, this is just equal to Newton per mm squared. Ayan. And then yung dimensions natin naka-mm kasi. The inside diameter is 100 mm. So for the first question, determine the outside diameter. Di ba alam natin yung general formula natin is stress equals force divided by the area. Ayan. So yung stress natin para sa letter A, 120 lang. Yan yung maximum working stress or yield stress. So for letter A, 120 Newton per mm squared. Convert na lang natin yung units. And then equal yan to the force divided by the area. Now ito yung force natin. The perpendicular area is this hollow portion. Parang hollow section. Ayan. So perpendicular yan, we have to use that area para sa P over A. Now yung P natin is 400 kilonewtons daw. So yung axial force applied, this is essentially a tensile force since pulling forces siya. Ayan. We would have 400 kilonewtons. But kailangan kasi na consistent lahat ng units natin. Now, naka-Newton yan, Newton per mm squared. So, yung unit ng force natin must be in newtons. Tapos, yung unit naman ng dimensional unit naman for distance must be naka-mm. So, yung 400 kilonewtons pala, we need to convert that into newtons. So, di ba, again, 1 kN is equal to 1000 newtons. Kung ano yung gusto mong i-cancel, ilagay mo sa denominator. So, magka-cancel na yung kilonewtons, matitira na lang is newtons. And then, for the area naman, we have a hollow section. Yung inside diameter is 100 mm. Ito yan. Yung dimension na yan, this is 100 mm. Now, yung area niyan, nung hollow section, it can be taken by taking the area of the outside circle minus the inside circle. So yung area ng outside circle, diba, this is pi d squared divided by 4 in terms of the diameter. Now, since outside diameter, capital D na lang. And then yung area inside naman, itong inside circle, yan, this is equal to pi times d squared divided by 4. Small letter d para sa inside diameter. So yung area ng hollow section, this would be the area of the outside circle, pi d squared divided by 4, and then minus, ano yung d? Di ba given yan? D is equal to 100 mm for the inside diameter. So pi times 100 mm, tapos square natin, divided by 4. Ito yung area na ilalagay natin sa force over area. So copy ko na lang to. Ayan. Divide natin by this amount. So solving D, di ba medyo mahirap yan i-simplify, but again, para maka-solve tayo ng maraming problems, I will just use my emulator. But pwede mo yang i-simplify, but on your own terms na. So equate ko na lang yan. Notice na matagal mag-solve yung calculator kapag yung unknown is nasa denominator. Diba, nasa denominator yan. So yung pwede mong gawin is you can just multiply this term sa kabilang side. So essentially, yung ita-type mo sa calculator is 120 and then multiplied by this denominator. So we have pi times unknown yung diameter natin, so lagyan mo ng x, and then divided by 4 minus pi times 100 squared, and then divided by 4. Ayan. And then equate natin. Equate to 400 multiplied by 1000. Ayan. Mas mabilis yung processing ng calculator kapag lahat ng unknowns mo nasa numerator lang. So kaya multiply natin siya sa kabila. So shift solve na lang tayo. Press equals, we would have 119.35. So ito yung inside diameter. I mean, yung outside diameter pala. Yan pala yung hinahanap. So 119. Ano yan? 348 or 35 mm. Na wala namang 5 sections na ito talaga yung exact na outside diameter. So usually, ginagawa natin tong 200 mm. Yan, say 200 mm yung minimum diameter. Now sir, bakit 200? Bakit hindi 119? Diba, 0.35. Pag na-ground off tayo, essentially, ginagawa natin 119 lang. Pero hindi yan pwede sa stress condition natin. Kasi yung 119, this is for exactly 120. 119.35. Kapag liliit yung diameter natin, mai-exceed na niya yung allowable stress. Yung yield stress pala. Therefore, we have to choose a diameter na mas malaki kesa sa na-solve natin. So, you can use 200, 201, or any other value greater than 119.35. But hindi ka pwedeng gumamit ng diameter na lesser than this value. So, kaya, gawin mo na lang 200. Now, ano naman kapag merong factor of safety? Ito yung dapat natin gawin. Diba, structures must support or transmit load, but due to uncertainties such as wind, snow, people, etc., ito yung mga uncertain loads na parang madadagdag sa structure natin. So, it is necessary to implement a factor of safety to ensure na yung capacity is greater than the load. So, yung formula natin for factor of safety, this is the actual strength divided by the required strength. One way to design for failure is to limit the stress on the structure. So, Fs is equal to the maximum stress or the yield stress divided by the stress allowable. So in terms of the stress allowable, pwede natin siyang i-multiply sa kabilang side, and then yung Fs, i-divide natin sa yield stress. So what we are doing here is essentially, yung stress allowable, mas maliit yan kesa sa maximum stress or yield stress. So yung reason dyan is the factor of safety must be greater than 1. Kasi di ba nasa denominator yan, it must be greater than 1 para mas liliit yung allowable. Mas ginagawa kasi natin conservative kapag merong factor of safety. So essentially, kapag in-apply natin yung factor of safety, yung makikita nyo dito is mas lalaki yung outside diameter na masosolve natin compared to letter A na wala tayong factor of safety na ginamit. So ito yung mangyayari sa letter B. For letter B, ayan, we can divide this stress, or essentially kapag gagamitin mo yung formula, yung maximum stress natin, maximum working stress is 120 MPa. So parang stress allowable is equal to 120 MPa divided by the factor of safety. So factor of safety 1.5, mas liliit na yung allowable stress natin. So ano yung 120 divided by 1.5? Diba 80 na lang. Instead of 120, gagamitin natin para sa stress na yan yung 80 na. So mas pinaliitan natin para mas conservative yung design. So this is 80 MPa. Stress allowable. Ayan. So instead of 120, parang yan lang yung magbabago. So copy ko na lang. Ayan. And then ito gagawin natin 80. Again, naging 80 yan dahil sa factor of safety na 1.5. In-apply natin sa maximum working stress. So dito na lang 80. Nako, na-erase ko na. Retype na lang natin. So solving the outside diameter, dapat mas lalaki siya kesa sa 119. So press equals, we have 127.93. And then our unit is mm. So sabihin natin 128 mm. Kailangan talaga mas malaki yung gamitin mo. So ito yung minimum. Notice na mas malaki siya kesa sa previous na nakuha natin. For a while bakit naging 200 yan? 120 pala to. Sorry. 120 mm. 119, gagawin natin 120. So yung 128, mas malaki kesa sa 120. Kasi meron tayong factor of safety na in-apply. Mas nagiging conservative yung design. So makikita nyo naman, this is safer than this outside diameter. Yan. Paki-correct na lang 120 yan. Ewan ko bakit naging 200. Lutang movements, men.